You know, all of this scientific, philosophical, spiritual, theoretical information that is so available to us right now really begins to leave biological changes within us. Because every time you learn something new, you make a new connection in your brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. And the Nobel Prize laureate Kandel in the year 2000 found that when people learn just one bit of information, they doubled the number of connections in their brain from 1,300 connections to 2,600 connections. But if they didn't review that information, if they didn't repeat it, if they didn't think about it or contemplate on it, those circuits pruned apart within hours or days. So if learning is making new synaptic connections, then remembering is maintaining and sustaining those connections. Physical evidence in your brain as a result of your interaction in the environment, footprints of consciousness. But if you can take that information and apply it, personalize it, demonstrate it, modify your behaviors in some way and do something differently, get your actions equal to your intentions and your mind and body working together, you are going to run into a new experience. And when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your 5 senses plug you into the external environment. And as your brain is gathering all this vital sensory data, all that information rushes back to your brain, and jungles of neurons organize themselves into networks, reinforcing the philosophical information, enriching the circuits in your brain, because that's what experience does. And I know, without a doubt now, that if you can give people sound information, and nothing is left to conjecture, nothing is left to dogma, nothing is left to superstition, and those people can understand those concepts made simple, and if they can turn to the person next to them and explain it, they're beginning to wire that information in their brain. And as they describe that model of understanding, they're firing and wiring new circuits in their brain, and they're beginning to install the neurological hardware in preparation for the experience. And if they can't explain it, it's not wired in there. And once they can build a model of understanding that's reflected in neurological networks, and you can set up the conditions for them to experience it, and you give them the proper instruction, a certain percentage of those people are going to have a new experience. And my passion in the last 4 years has been measuring transformation. Because if I can gather more information from what I'm studying in common people that look just like you, they're not Buddhist monks, they're not nuns with 40 years of devotion, they're not ministers, they're not priests, they're not academics, they're not scholars, they're not rabbis, they're common people just like you, of every age, of every color, of every race, of every culture, of every profession. That giving people the understanding of how to empower themselves, and then do the measurements to prove it's just not a subjective experience, but we could measure it objectively. And if I could interpret and understand that scientific measurement, I am going to have more information to teach transformation the next time. And if I could then measure it again, I'll have more information to teach transformation the next time. And we can begin to close the gap between knowledge and experience. Can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet? But you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the experience has already occurred. The latest research in neuroscience says you can change your brain just by thinking. And can you fall in love with a future potential that already exists in the quantum field? And how many potentials exist in the quantum field? Hello? A few? How about infinite? Infinite potentials in the quantum field. Can you select a new potential in the quantum field and emotionally embrace that future reality before it's made manifest to such degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, is believing it's living in that future reality in the present moment, and you're signaling new genes and new ways to change your body to look like the experience has already occurred? That's what epigenetics says. Now reason this with me, geniuses. If there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the experience has already happened, there's evidence there physically, by thought alone. Relax, because the experience is going to find you. And it's going to come in a way that you least expect. Why? Because if you can expect it, it's nothing new. It's got to rock your world. It's got to catch you off guard, and it has to leave no doubt that what you did inside of you produced some effect outside of you. And when you correlate the changes you've made inside of you with the effect that you produced outside of you, you're going to pay attention to what you did, and you're going to do it again. And that's called human empowerment. And the experience, when it finds you, is going to surprise you because it's an unknown. And the event is going to capture all of your attention, because that's what a new experience does. And the emotion that's created from that event is going to create a long-term memory, and you're going to associate what you did inside of you with what you created outside of you. And I don't care who you are or what's happened in your past, but when that moment lands in your lap, you are going to look back at your entire past, and you're not going to want to change one thing about it, because it brought you to that elegant present moment. And that's when the past no longer exists. All of you, at some point in your life, have done something great. You got a wild idea, a vision. You asked a simple question to yourself, a frontal lobe question. The crowning achievement of the human being is the forebrain. That's the workshop. That's the creative center. That's the boss, the CEO, the symphony leader. It has connections to all other parts of the brain. And you asked yourself a question like, what would it be like to create this new job? What would it be like to go on this adventure? What would it be like to change something about myself? The moment you ask that question, the frontal lobe, like a great symphony leader, has connections to all other parts of the brain. And it begins to select different networks of neurons that's housed in the brain from something you learned intellectually or something you experienced. And it seamlessly pieces them together to fire in a new way, and you get a vision, you get an idea. That hologram that you see is a potential in the quantum field that you're selecting. It's an unknown. But the passionate person who does this, the thought that they're embracing in that moment becomes the experience. And they begin to feel the joy, the excitement, the inspiration, the enthusiasm, and theos, filled with God. They come out of their resting state and they feel the emotion before the event. And that emotion is giving the body a sampling of the future. And you just moved into a new state of being.